I am 73 years old and I am dying. The doctor says I have perhaps 6 months left, maybe less if the infection spreads further. I want to tell you something that very few men in this world know, and even fewer would ever admit in their right mind. I was a Freemason, not just any Mason, but a 33rd degree member of the Scottish Rite Southern jurisdiction, the pinnacle of achievement for most men in the fraternity. I achieved the highest rank available. I was honored in ceremonies that seemed absolutely incomprehensible to anyone standing outside the temple doors. Ceremonies that were supposed to transform the human soul and reveal the deepest secrets of the universe. I took oaths that were supposed to bind me unto death itself. And I am here now in this nursing home in Nashville, Tennessee, alone in a small room that smells like disinfectant and old age, to tell you that everything I believed about Freemasonry was a beautiful and terrible lie, built on layers of calculated deception. I was initiated into Freemasonry in Atlanta in 1974 when I was 23 years old and fresh from Emory Law School, full of ambition and intellectual confidence. Judge Caldwell brought me into the lodge, a powerful man my own father had respected deeply. The Blue Lodge initiation was theatrical, but profoundly moving. I was blindfolded, led through darkness toward light, experiencing vulnerability and a strange spiritual awakening. They told me I was a rough stone, being readied for the builder's work. It felt sacred. It felt meaningful. Within 2 years, I had taken the Fellowcraft degree and the Master Mason degree, and I understood that Freemasonry operated just beneath the surface of American civic life, in ways I had never previously noticed. The Scottish Rite beckoned in the mid-1980s, and I eagerly pursued it with a hunger I did not fully understand. Degree by degree, I climbed higher through the sacred degrees. Knight Templar, Master of the Temple, Sublime Prince of the Royal Secret. I learned the intricate symbolism of Solomon's Temple, the complex allegories of resurrection and rebirth, hidden in every ritual word and symbol. Judge Caldwell explained the deeper philosophical meanings and introduced me to men of genuine influence in our city. My law practice grew substantially. I became a circuit court judge in 1988. I began to understand that Freemasonry was about access, about knowing which men would help you, which judges might show flexibility, which business opportunities would materialize if you were a brother. There was a knowing wink and nod between us. This was how things worked in Tennessee. My wife, Margaret, was proud of my advancement. My son, Thomas, became indifferent to the lodge entirely. But my daughter, Sarah, was different. Sarah began asking serious questions when she was 16 years old. Why did I spend so many nights away from home? What did the lodge actually teach? When she became an evangelical Christian at 18, everything fractured between us. She wanted to know the truth about what the lodge really was. I told her Freemasonry was consistent with Christianity, that many brothers were devout men of faith. She brought me passages from Albert Pike's Morals and Dogma, where he discussed Lucifer, where he talked of worship not toward Christ, but toward another light, where he explained the devil card as human liberation from divine constraint. I told her she was taking Pike out of context, that she was young and did not understand philosophy. We fought bitterly about this. By the time Sarah was 21 in 1993, she had moved out and moved into her evangelical church community. I told her she could not live in our home if she could not respect her father's life calling. Margaret wept. A man's loyalty to the brotherhood is sacred. My daughter's doubts were the arrogance of youth and the manipulation of fanatical religion. For 20 years, I had almost no contact with Sarah. She would call on my birthday. I would be short with her. She would send Christmas cards. I would acknowledge them perfunctorily. When Margaret had her stroke in 2008, Sarah tried to visit, but I made absolutely clear that her prayers and her God could not save my wife. So what was the point of her presence in our home during those final days? When Margaret died that terrible December, Sarah came to the funeral. I permitted her to sit in the front row, but I barely spoke to her during those 3 awful days. She tried to hug me as we left the cemetery. I pulled away from her. The lodge was my real family, and they had proven their loyalty to me in ways that blood family never would. The late 1990s brought me deeper into the Scottish Rite degrees. I sought admission to the consistory and the Council of Kadosh. Judge Caldwell had passed by then, but his successor, Gerald Hamilton, took me under his wing. I learned the degree of Grand Master Architect, the degree of Knight Beneficent of the Holy City. Hamilton explained how Freemasonry preserved ancient wisdom from Alexandria, how it protected knowledge the church suppressed, how great men used the fraternity to advance civilization against religious obscurantism. The degrees grew darker as I ascended. There was explicit instruction about the nature of divinity. It became clear, though never stated, entirely without ambiguity, that the grand architect of the universe was not the God of the Bible. It was something else entirely. The 33rd degree ceremony came in 2004 in Charlotte, North Carolina. I was invited to petition for admission to the Supreme Council's southern jurisdiction. I drove there with anticipation, mixed with strange nervousness I could not explain. I had taken so many oaths by then, bound by so many promises of absolute secrecy, sealed with terrible penalties. Through all the degrees, I had learned that the God of Christianity, as taught in churches, was not the God of the Lodge. The Lodge taught that the light of reason, human potential, enlightenment, was the true light. This light had been obscured, intentionally suppressed by religious institutions that wanted to keep humanity in darkness. The 33rd degree ceremony involved a ritual of death and resurrection unlike anything I had experienced. I was blindfolded again and placed in a symbolic tomb. I was told I was dead to the world and being reborn into the highest knowledge. There were symbols I had never seen before. There were words spoken in what might have been Hebrew. There was a moment when I was told, explicitly and without any misunderstanding, that the true object of our worship was not a God of love or mercy, but a God of power and intellect, a God of human will and achievement, representing enlightenment that transcended Christian morality and Christian limitations. I was told I had reached the culmination of my journey, that I was part of a fraternity that truly ruled the world, that our principles were embedded in the constitutions of nations. There was no turning back. There was no exit except death. For the first time in 50 years, I experienced doubt that would not be silenced by the usual explanations and comfortable rationalizations. Judge Hamilton began sending me explicit information about Masonic history, about Pike's actual vision for the restoration of ancient wisdom and the deliberate defeat of Christianity, about how Christianity had weakened the Western world by imposing limitation and guilt on human striving. He sent philosophical texts that were explicitly atheistic, writings suggesting that the God of the Bible was a false God, a jealous creator, and that enlightenment truly meant liberation from this cosmic tyranny. I read these materials with mounting horror. I went to the Masonic Library in Memphis and read unvarnished statements about what the higher degrees actually taught, stripped of their protective layers of allegory. I began to see with a clarity that was both stunning and horrifying that I had spent 50 years of my life serving something that was the opposite of what I had told myself I was serving. The worst moment came in 2016. There was a final ritual that was supposed to be held, a special ceremony for 33rd degree members who had achieved what was called the royal secret, the innermost knowledge. It was to take place at a private lodge in the mountains near Knoxville. I drove up on a Friday evening and entered that lodge, and the ceremony began. And in that ceremony, I witnessed something that I cannot fully describe, because I am still bound by oath not to speak of the specific rites and words that were used. But I can tell you this: I witnessed men invoking what they called the true light. And that light was explicitly not the light of Christ. I watched rituals that were deliberately designed to mock the Christian God, to mock the cross, to mock Christ's suffering and death as a hoax perpetrated to control the masses. I watched them celebrate human will and human intellect as the only true gods worth serving. Something broke in me completely. It was the last remnant of conscience that had made me a judge, the echo of Christian faith my mother had instilled before the lodge seduced me. I stood up and said no. I said no to the oath, no to the brotherhood, no to the light that was not Christ. I walked out and never returned. I mailed my resignation to the Supreme Council the next day. I returned my compass and square ring that I had worn for 40 years, that ring that had been my identity for half my life. But what I did not do, and what I should have done immediately, was confess publicly what I had learned about the true nature of Freemasonry. I should have stood up in my church and warned everyone I knew about the danger that was lurking beneath the beautiful pageantry and the promises of enlightenment. But I did not. I was still bound, perhaps, by a residual fear of the oaths I had sworn, perhaps crushed by shame and the realization of what I had done, perhaps too weak and too old to face the fact that I had wasted 50 years of my life in service to a lie. Instead, I kept quiet. I retired from the bench in 2017, telling people it was due to health reasons and deteriorating condition. I slowly distanced myself from the lodge and from everyone in it, and I waited for my conscience to quiet, and it never did. It never did. Margaret was already gone. She died in 2008, and I had never told her the truth about what I had encountered in the lodge. I let her die believing her husband was a good man, a man of wisdom and standing, a man who belonged to an honorable brotherhood. I let her die believing a lie. Sarah had been right when she was 21, and I was a powerful judge. She had been right about the danger. I had spent 20 years being cold to her, rejecting her, because she warned me about something absolutely true. When Sarah learned I had left Freemasonry, she tried to reconcile. This was in 2017, when I was 64 years old. She came to Nashville and visited me, but I was broken, ashamed, unable to speak to my own daughter after what I had done to our relationship. I told her it was too late, that too much time had passed, that I could not explain what drove me away because I was still bound by oath. So I remained in silence. That silence became another wall between us. I moved into this nursing home in 2022 after a stroke weakened my left side. I am alone in a small room with a window overlooking a parking lot. I sit here day after day knowing my time is ending. During my second month here, a nurse named Patricia found me sitting in complete darkness. She asked if I was all right. I told her I was dying and had spent my life in service to something wicked and destroyed the one relationship that mattered most. Patricia said, "You are dying, but that doesn't mean it's too late to come home." She asked if I believed in Jesus. I told her the lodge had taught me to despise Jesus, that Christianity was oppression, that Christ's sacrifice was weakness. She said, "That is a lie, and I think you know it." She brought me a Bible the next day, a New Testament with Psalms and Proverbs included. She said, "Read John, start there." I sat in this room and read the Gospel of John, and I wept. I heard Jesus speak for the first time in 50 years, and understood that everything the lodge had taught me was inverted and backwards. The lodge taught love is weakness. The Gospel showed me love is the foundation of all true power. The lodge taught revelation is oppression. The Gospel showed me God's revelation is liberation. The lodge taught death and resurrection were metaphors for self-enlightenment. The Gospel showed me Christ's death and resurrection are the literal salvation of the world. I gave my life to Christ 2 months ago. I was baptized in a small pool in the chapel with Patricia and 3 other nurses and a chaplain present. As I went under the water, I felt something break away, some weight, some darkness that had been attached to my soul for 50 years. When I came up, I was gasping and weeping and alive in a way I had not been since before Freemasonry claimed me. But here is the truth. Finding Christ does not undo the damage I did. It does not bring Margaret back. It does not restore 40 years with Sarah that I destroyed. I wrote to her last month. I told her I had left Freemasonry, become Christian, that she had been right all along. I have not heard back. I do not expect to. I have forfeited that grace. I have used up the years I had to make things right. I am 73 and dying. Sarah needs to know that I finally understood what she tried to tell me when she was 21. She was right about the lodge. She was right about the danger. She was right about the need to flee toward Christ. I am sorry to Margaret, to Sarah, to everyone I treated unjustly from the bench, while bound by oath to the lodge. Most of all, I am sorry I was too proud, too ashamed, too weak to face what I had done while I still had time to make it right with her. That is my deepest regret. That is what I will carry into whatever judgment awaits beyond this life. And I pray that God will show me mercy, not because I deserve it, but because Christ paid a price that covers even a 50-year betrayal like mine.